welcome to our deep dive. We're going deep into Buddhist meditation, something I know you're curious about.
Oh, yeah. It's a fascinating area.
Exactly. And we're going to use Transform Your Life, Buddhist Meditation for Beginners, as our guide.
Great book.
Really breaks things down.
Mhm.
Now, before we get into the how-to, it's worth emphasizing that this isn't about becoming a Buddhist.
Right.
This is about techniques anyone can use to cultivate peace and clarity, in everyday life.
Absolutely. And the book really stresses this. Understanding the mind is at the core of it all.
Okay, so not just sitting there trying to, empty your head.
Yeah. No, it's not about that at all.
So what does understanding the mind even mean?
It's more about observing your thoughts without judgment, like seeing them as just passing moments.
Interesting. I can see how that would be helpful.
It's a bit like watching clouds drift by. They come, they go.
Right, you see them, but you don't have to cling to each one.
Exactly. And so many people think meditation is about clearing your mind completely, which honestly can be kind of stressful.
I can imagine. Forcing your mind blank. That sounds difficult.
The book actually suggests that approach often backfires. Buddhist meditation focuses on creating space around your thoughts.
So giving yourself some breathing room.
Exactly. And that helps loosen the grip of those difficult emotions.
Okay, so not eliminating thoughts, but changing how we react to them.
You got it. When you create that space, you're less likely to be totally hijacked by negativity, like anger or anxiety.
So that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
How do we actually develop this skill? What does the book suggest?
Well, it dives into different types of meditation. One you've probably heard of, mindfulness meditation.
Mindfulness, yeah. Also called Vipassana, right?
That's right. Ever tried it?
I've heard the term, but I'm not sure I totally get how it works.
It's pretty simple, really. The core of it is focusing on your breath. Just observe each inhale and exhale as it happens.
Okay, so if I'm doing this and suddenly I remember I need to pick up milk, do I mess it up?
Not at all. You just notice the thought, there's the milk thought, and gently guide your attention back to your breath. No judgment.
So it's more about training your mind to return to the present over and over.
You got it. Building a mental habit.
Makes sense. And the book, it highlights how mindfulness meditation has all these benefits, right?
Tons. Reducing stress, increasing mental clarity, even improving focus.
Like a mental workout.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of workouts, do you need to meditate for hours to see these benefits?
That's a common misconception. The book actually emphasizes that even 5 minutes a day can make a difference. Consistency is key.
5 minutes. That's way less intimidating than I thought.
It's about building a habit, like a regular exercise routine. Start small and gradually increase the time.
Makes sense. But even 5 minutes can feel long when your mind is racing.
The restless mind. A common challenge, especially when starting out.
It's natural, right?
Totally. The book acknowledges that. It's not a sign of failure, though. Think of it as an opportunity.
An opportunity, I'd probably just get frustrated and give up.
Instead of seeing it as a setback, each time you notice your mind wandering and gently guide it back, you're strengthening your focus.
So those little failures are actually part of the process.
Exactly. It's like building a mental muscle. And Buddhist meditation is all about patience and self-compassion, recognizing that progress is gradual.
Each time you bring your attention back, it's a small victory. I like that.
It is.
So we're not striving for perfection, just consistent effort.
You got it. And to support that effort, the book talks about posture and breath awareness.
Okay, I've seen those pictures of, super bendy yogis in crazy positions.
You don't need to be a contortionist.
So I don't have to do that to meditate, right?
Nope. While the traditional seated position with a straight spine does promote alertness, the book encourages finding a posture that's comfortable for you.
Okay, comfort is good.
The key is balance.
Yeah.
Relaxed, but not sleepy. And that's where breath awareness comes in.
So it's not just about mindfulness meditation, it's important for the whole practice.
Absolutely. Your breath becomes an anchor, a steady point of focus to keep you from getting lost in thought.
Especially for beginners, right?
Especially for beginners. Focusing on the breath helps bring you back to the present moment whenever your mind wanders.
So the breath is almost like a tool, a way to ground yourself.
Exactly. And in Buddhism, the breath is seen as this bridge between your mind and body, a constant presence you can always return to.
It's like all these pieces observing thoughts, mindfulness, posture, even my breath are working together.
They are. And they all point towards this overarching goal the book discusses: freedom from attachment and suffering.
Now, I'm curious about that idea of detachment.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit extreme, like you just stop caring about
But a
anything.
common misconception. Buddhist meditation isn't about becoming indifferent. Detachment, in this context, is more about shifting your perspective. It's about appreciating things without needing to cling to them.
So you could still enjoy things, like a delicious meal or a new opportunity, but just not let it make or break your happiness.
That's the idea, and this shift can be incredibly liberating. It's about experiencing life more fully, with more presence and less anxiety.
I'm starting to see how this all connects. It's
Yep.
like meditation gives you tools to be more present, less reactive, and ultimately freer.
You got it.
And as you practice, you naturally start to develop more self-awareness, which the book emphasizes as well.
Right, self-awareness is key.
What's the connection between meditation and self-awareness?
It's like holding a mirror up to your inner world. By paying attention to your thoughts, emotions, reactions, you begin to see patterns and gain insights.
So it's not just about feeling calmer, it's about understanding yourself better.
Precisely. And this increased self-awareness allows you to respond to situations more thoughtfully, less impulsively.
This is all fascinating. I'm definitely feeling inspired to learn more. But before we move on, there's one point that really stood out to me.
Oh, what's that?
We've talked about how Buddhist meditation helps detach from desires and fears. But if we're detaching from those things, does that mean we just stop caring about things altogether?
That's a great question, and a common one. It's not about apathy or indifference. It's about a different kind of engagement with the world, one that's less driven by craving and aversion, more rooted in wisdom and compassion. But we'll delve into this paradox more in the next part of our deep dive. You know, it's kind of funny how Buddhist meditation challenges our ideas about happiness.
Oh, totally. Like, we're told happiness comes from getting what we want.
Right? The new phone, the dream job, winning that argument.
Exactly. But this book offers a different perspective.
Absolutely. It encourages us to look inward, to find a contentment that's not like dependent on all those external things.
Which brings us back to my question from last time.
About detachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can you be detached and still care about things? It's a bit of a puzzle.
It is a paradox, but the book offers some really insightful explanations. Detachment, in the Buddhist sense, isn't about apathy.
Okay, good to know.
It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't have desires.
Right.
It's more about shifting your perspective, changing how you relate to those desires.
Okay, so what does that look like? I'm having a hard time picturing it.
Let's say you're really attached to getting a promotion at work.
Oh, yeah.
You're constantly thinking about it, stressing over it, putting your self-worth on the line.
Been there. Exhausting.
It is. And the problem is when you're that attached to the outcome, your happiness hinges on it completely.
Right, you get it, you're ecstatic, you're crushed.
Exactly. Your emotions are on this roller coaster.
So how would a Buddhist approach handle that? Just like not care about the promotion?
Not necessarily. You'd still acknowledge your desire for it, but you wouldn't let it consume you.
Okay.
You'd focus on doing your best, but without attaching your self-worth to the outcome.
So putting in the effort without getting tangled up in the results. Sounds good, but is that even possible?
It takes practice. That's where those mindfulness and loving-kindness practices we talked about come in. They build the mental and emotional resilience you need.
Ah, so you can weather those ups and downs without losing yourself.
Exactly. So by practicing detachment, you're not giving up on your goals. You're learning to be more present, less reactive.
Makes sense. And the book suggests that this can actually lead to a deeper engagement with the world.
It can.
How does detachment lead to deeper engagement? That's a bit of a mind bender.
Think of it this way. When you're not so caught up in your own wants and worries, you're more open to experiencing things as they are.
Ah, without all those mental filters.
Exactly. You can be more present with people, appreciate those small joys, connect to something bigger than yourself.
Like you're clearing out mental clutter to make room for something more meaningful.
Yes. And the book hints at this idea that when you're not constantly striving, you're more likely to act from genuine compassion.
You're doing things because you truly care, not because you expect something in return.
Exactly. So Buddhist meditation isn't just about personal transformation. It's about a more compassionate way of being in the world.
It's like that ripple effect. The inner peace you find starts to affect everything around you.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes this isn't just some lofty ideal. It's achievable if you put in the work.
I like that. Sometimes spiritual stuff can seem out of reach,
I get it.
But this idea that small, consistent effort can lead to real change, that's encouraging.
It's about those small steps, day after day, like nurturing a tiny seed you've planted.
And over time, it blossoms into something beautiful.
I love that analogy.
It's a good one. It shows us that even though the journey might be challenging, each step towards that inner peace is worth it.
It is.
But this book isn't all big, lofty ideas, right?
Okay.
It also gives practical advice.
Of course.
We've talked about starting small, finding a good posture, using your breath.
Right, the basics.
But what about those moments when, you just get totally distracted?
Yes. That restless mind. The book has tips for handling those moments.
I think we all need those. My mind definitely has a life of its own sometimes.
One of the biggest things the book emphasizes is self-compassion. It's normal for our minds to wander, especially as beginners. Don't criticize yourself.
Easier said than done.
I know, but just notice those distractions without judgment. Gently guide your attention back.
Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend who is struggling.
Exactly. The book even reframes those distractions as opportunities. Each time you bring your attention back, you're strengthening your focus.
So I'm not failing when I get distracted. I'm actually training my mind.
That's the spirit. And the book also talks about creating a supportive environment for your practice.
Oh, that's important?
Find a quiet spot, set a specific time, maybe even join a meditation group.
Having some structure can make it much easier to stick with a new habit, especially something like meditation.
Absolutely. And the book even suggests little rituals, lighting a candle, burning incense, even just taking a few moments to settle in before you begin.
Oh, I love that. Those little things make such a difference. It's like signaling to your mind and body that it's time to shift gears.
Exactly. They can add a sense of sacredness to your practice.
It's like creating a little sanctuary.
I love that. And that's really what it's all about. Discovering that inner peace and stillness that's always there no matter what's happening around you.
Carrying a little piece of calm with you wherever you go.
Precisely. And as you practice, that calm radiates outward, influencing how you interact with others.
Embodying the change you want to see.
Exactly. And Buddhist meditation offers a path for that inner change, one breath at a time.
This has been so insightful. I'm already thinking about how to deepen my own practice. But before we wrap up this part, I have one more question.
Okay, shoot.
We've been focusing on the personal benefits of Buddhist meditation, like stress reduction, compassion, inner peace. But what about its potential impact on a bigger scale?
Interesting.
Could these practices, if more people adopted them, actually contribute to a more peaceful and just world?
That's a fantastic question, a big one for sure, and one we'll dive into more in the final part of our deep dive. It's a big idea that inner transformation can lead to positive social change, but the book certainly hints at that possibility.
So now we're tackling the big question. Can Buddhist meditation actually make the world a better place?
It's a question worth pondering.
It does sound a little idealistic, I'll admit.
Maybe, but the book really digs into those larger implications.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
It suggests that these practices, if more people adopted them, could really contribute to a more peaceful and just world.
Okay, that's a big claim. How does that even work, practically speaking?
Well, it starts with the individual transformation we've been discussing.
Mm-hmm.
As folks develop more mindfulness, compassion, self-awareness through their practice,
Right.
they naturally become more sensitive to the suffering of others,
I can see that.
less likely to act from that place of greed or hatred,
Mm-hmm.
or just being totally caught up in their own limited view. They're more likely to approach things with understanding, empathy.
It's like that ripple effect, starting with yourself.
Exactly. The inner peace you cultivate starts to spread outward, influencing your relationships, your community, and maybe, eventually, the world.
Wow, that's powerful.
And the book really highlights how Buddhist teachings emphasize this interconnectedness.
Oh, right, the idea that we're all connected.
We're all part of this vast web of life. Our actions have consequences that go way beyond ourselves.
I could see that. When you view yourself as part of a larger whole, you're more likely to consider the well-being of everyone.
Precisely.
But how do these principles actually play out in, real life? Give me an example.
Okay, imagine a world where more people practice mindfulness in their everyday lives. They might be less reactive in those stressful situations.
Right, we've all been there.
More patient when they're stuck in traffic, more understanding when they encounter different viewpoints. Maybe even less likely to turn to violence or aggression, more likely to look for peaceful solutions to conflicts.
I mean, that sounds amazing. Sign me up.
Mm-hmm.
But could Buddhist principles really influence things like social justice or environmental sustainability, those are huge, complex issues.
They are, but the book suggests that they can. For example, the principle of non-harming,
Okay,
which is central to Buddhism, can be applied to so much more than just physical harm.
I see.
It can include things like economic exploitation, environmental destruction, systemic discrimination.
So it's about recognizing the inherent worth of all beings no matter what.
Exactly, treating everyone with respect and compassion, regardless of their race, religion, gender, even their species.
It's a big shift in thinking.
It is. And when we start actually living by those principles, it can change our priorities, right?
Hmm.
Away from consumerism, greed, that constant chase for material things, towards a more sustainable and equitable way of life.
It's an inspiring vision, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think some folks might still be skeptical. They might see Buddhist meditation as, like, too passive, too focused on personal enlightenment to really make a difference in a world with so much injustice. How would you respond to that?
That's a fair point. I'd say that while Buddhist meditation does cultivate inner peace and stillness, it's not about withdrawing from the world or
Okay.
becoming indifferent to its problems. It's the opposite, really. The insights and compassion you gain through practice can actually fuel a more engaged and effective approach to social action.
So it's not an either. You can have inner peace A and D work for social justice.
Exactly. And the book even highlights examples of people and organizations putting this integrated approach into action,
Oh, that's cool.
combining contemplative practices with social activism to create real change. They're tackling poverty, inequality, environmental damage, conflict resolution, all while drawing inspiration from Buddhist principles.
That's really encouraging to hear.
It is. It shows that it's not just some abstract philosophy. It's about real-world application. But of course, it's not a quick fix, right?
Magic solution.
It's an ongoing journey. Requires patience, dedication, a willingness to look at ourselves honestly.
To face those parts of ourselves we might not like.
Exactly. And the book makes it clear, this path isn't always easy or comfortable,
True. Real growth rarely is.
but it's important to remember we're not alone on this journey.
We have each other. We have the teachings.
There's a whole tradition of practices and communities ready to support us.
This has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much.
We have.
From the basics of Buddhist meditation to its potential to literally change the world. What's the key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with today?
I'd say a deeper understanding that Buddhist meditation, even a little bit, can be a really powerful tool for developing inner peace, compassion, self-awareness.
Right.
And those qualities, when we nurture them, they can spread outward, sparking positive change in our relationships, our communities, and ultimately the world.
That's beautifully said. And for our listener, if you're feeling inspired, I highly recommend checking out Transform Your Life, Buddhist Meditation for Beginners. It's a fantastic starting point. As you explore these practices, remember this. If Buddhist meditation can help us let go of those desires and fears that hold us back, could it open us up to a deeper, more meaningful way of living? Hold on to that question as you practice and see where it leads you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.